Maimer, or Samach. They'll be introduced to Maimer by reviewing what was discussed previously. That there is oy makif and oy pnimi. And oy makif is poshut be'etzem, as we discussed yesterday a little bit. And then he also mentioned that in oy makif itself there are two madrigas. That's called hiri lo and hiri tator. And the Rebbe briefly said that hiri lo is this is the oy makif as it is before the tzimzum. And then there is the oy makif after the tzimzum. Again, we very briefly discussed beginning from before the tzimzum, the significance of being before the tzimzum and after the tzimzum. The principle is that oy makif is a direct reflection of the etzem that it represents. We discussed yesterday the term oyer. That oyer is the impact of the etzem. The mashal that we gave for that is a human being. He has an etzem, so to speak, a fundamental right to own a home. And as such, when he owns a home, there's an oyer. There's the impact of his presence that immediately encompasses the entire home without him even having to visit all the different rooms and their contours. This is called oyer, which reflects an etzem, a fundamental reality. Human ownership of a home is mandated by the Creator himself. And therefore this is not something which is created on the worldly level, but this is a divine truth. And that's why it is called etzem, and there is oyer. It immediately encompasses the entire reality. Okay, now we're going to oy samach. Omeyato. And then, from now on, therefore, tzorich lahovi. Now we want to understand mahu hahefresh. What is the difference? Legabe ho'ilomois, relative and in impact on the world, bechinas makif hakloli, between the aspect of makif hakloli, the general makif, shelifnei hatzimtzum, makif that is before the tzimtzum, the bechinas makif hakloli she'achar hatzimtzum, as opposed to the makif that's after the tzimtzum. Makif, we already discussed, but just to put it, so to speak, in front of us so that we know what you're talking about when you go forward. All functional, pnimi is called functional koiches. We spoke about it, let's say speech is a functional koich. Only a human being can have speech. Speech fits only to a human being because he's got a makif, he has got a certain sense of reality of the existence of being in the world. And therefore, by him, speech is a suitable thing. When an animal has quote-unquote speech, he doesn't represent any makif, any reality behind it, and therefore this is what's called a parrot. He just repeats the sounds rather than the speech than saying something. So makif is what actually identifies and gives presence to the entire reality. Everything that comes forth in a functional level is buttressed, is inspired, and given validity because of the makif. And as the Rebbe is pointing out, we said before, that there are two levels in makif. The makif hakloli means the overall makif that encompasses everything. And there are two levels in this makif hakloli. There's a makif hakloli before the tzimzum and after the tzimzum. What's the implication in this? Makif hakloli, makif in general, represents the truth of the Creator himself, the presence of the Creator himself. Hashem decided to reveal himself so that he be a presence, a recognizable presence. This creates the makif. And this makif, there are two distinct levels. Before the tzimzum and after the tzimzum. What's the difference in a basic sense, before and after the tzimzum? Before the tzimzum, let me just explain. Tzimzum means contractions, reduction of impact, reduction of oil. What is the purpose of reduction of oil? The purpose of reduction of oil is the oil, as it emanates directly from the etzem, is totally all-encompassing and overwhelming, and does not allow for any tangible entity, tangible presence, for a worldly presence. Let me give us a little bit of a handle because we're going into this. This cup is standing on the table. Everyone who is a little bit has been introduced, so to speak, to worldly thinking, says a cup is standing on the table because there is in the world, because the earth has a power of
attraction,
gravity. The earth is the gravitational pull of the earth is holding this cup down. And with this gravity and all other worldly phenomena, we explain everything that's going on. From a divine perspective, from perspective of what this stands for, what this represents, from the Creator's perspective, there's a completely different view and different understanding of the entire phenomenon. As we said yesterday, the Creator created dynamically the entire reality. Entire reality, how can it be the entire reality? Because it's maintained by the Creator Spirit. And this is what gives it a presence. It is not based on its physical structure. It is as the Creator wants it to be. The Creator wanted to have a world. And in the world, there is Shomayim v'oretz. Basically, the Shomayim v'oretz. Shomayim means that which is above. On the worldly level, in the world itself, it is encompassing the world and presents to the world something which is higher, which is known only by sight. That's what's up. And then there is the Oretz, which is known only by touch. And he wanted that it should be Shomayim and Oretz. Shomayim is up, that which does not have a physical presence, and it stays up aloof. It hovers over the earth. Then there is earth, there's matter down. He wanted to be Shomayim and Oretz. And therefore there is the Oretz, the matter, which is the lower part of world. This lower part of the world its presence belongs below, on the bottom. All physical entities belong to the bottom. All spiritual entities belong to the top. Like we said just a moment ago. What does a person look at when he first wakes up? On the earth or on the sky? He looks at the bottom of the sky. The earth there's no point of looking at. The earth, by treating it, by walking on it, and by taking pieces, building a house on it, this is already, so to speak, the how you utilize it on the bottom. Therefore, coming back to this cup standing, the cup is standing from the worldly perspective because of the gravitational pull of the earth. From a divine, a true creation perspective, it's standing because it is meant to serve the human being. And in order for the human being to have access to it, with his hand, he has to be here on the bottom. With his eyes, he can see it out, but with his hand, to be able to feed himself, he has to be down here. So this cup being here has a divine significance. It's being served to the human being for his use. And this is why it is here on the bottom. So he should have easy access. And as he's holding it, it'll be secure in his hand. Without that, there could not be that whole service, that phenomenon. If you look at the world from this perspective, this makif perspective, you see no world altogether. You see only the divine plan of of the spirit about the world, what this represents. The human being is in the world in order to recognize the godly presence and to think into it and to act accordingly and so forth. You don't see world. In order that there would be a cognizance of world, and that you would know that in order to have a table standing, you have to first create the four legs and then put it together and put it on the floor. In order to do that, you have to be tzimzum, You have to reduce the impact of this oil and start thinking bottom up. The idea is the same. You still want to have a home. You still want to have human services. But in order to, but the idea, on the idea level, it is still, so to speak, spiritual, a spirit, an neshama spirit. But practically speaking, it is something which is created from the world itself. In order that we should be able to orient ourselves in creating something from a worldly source, there has to be a tzimzum. You have to think of a home as a structure of four walls, not a home, a conceptual home that is conceptualized from a spiritual level view. Physically speaking, a home is a structure of four walls and a roof, and it protects a person against the elements, from the wind and from the heat and from the cold and the rain and so forth. If it does not do that, it's not a home. But really, to the human being, a home is a completely different thing. It's not just to protect himself against the elements. It gives him a secure and an established place in the world whence he can start disseminating his ideas and his principles. It's a completely different thing. But in order to facilitate this higher element, it has to come down into the world and be a spring structure that, by its design, is just a physical protector against the elements. And it stands there like a dumb box. Okay, enough said with that, much more. So, in order that there be a world, there has to be a tzimzum. There has to be a reduction of the impact of the source, of the spirit. Because as long as you're involved only in the purpose and the significance of it, you can't orient yourself in building a world. Not only in building a world, but even to relate to world. I don't see the cup standing. I see the cup serving a human being drinking. That's not a cup. You can't build a cup like that. So this points out that there are two levels in makif. There's makif hakloli, and there's makif kloli. Makif kloli means a makif that encompasses the entire worldly reality. Within that itself, there are two levels. There is the makif hakloli that as it is after the tzimzum, and makif hakloli as it is before the tzimzum. After the tzimzum means, yes, it encompasses the entire reality of the world, but it has a worldly cognizance. It encompasses everything in the world for the sake of, in order that there should be world. It recognizes world. Before that tzimzum, it encompasses everything from the top down. It doesn't recognize world. It's godly completely, because there's a godly significance to it. There is no world inference at all. This is makif hakloli b'fnei hatzimtzum, makif hakloli she'achar hatzimtzum. So the Rebbe says, so we have two levels that's called makif hakloli. Makif hakloli means a makif that encompasses the entire worldly reality. Let us point out the difficulty about this. Makif HaKloli means the human being, who is the neshama, the topmost element in the world, and this cup are in the same makif, are in the same level. This means makif HaKloli. Because neither the human being nor the cup could exist without this makif, without this overall encompassment. This is called makif HaKloli. Makif Kloli, the Rebbe said, as we mentioned before, there are two madrigas in it. Makif HaKloli as it is perceived before the tzimzum, from the Creator's vantage point. And then how it is after the tzimzum. Even after the world has been recognized, we still have the Makif HaKloli that can equalize, so to speak, put in the same level the highest symbol in the world and the simplest symbol in the world. The human being is a human being and he's got his capabilities and so forth only because he is in the world. As I mentioned many times, we build a house on Mars, it's not a house, it's not a home. On Earth, it's a home, because the Earth provides this makif, this fundamental reality. This is an abode where a human being can live. And Mars is not a place where a human being can live. It's not meant for him to live. Therefore, a structure of a home is not a home. In order to make a physical home, you have to have a makif kloli. This makif kloli is that which identifies this as a livable place. When you identify it as a livable place, you're really talking about from a worldly perspective, which means after the tzimzum. You already identified the world. Then there's makif kloli from the Creator's perspective. The Shemayim v'Za'oretz. Also encompasses everything in the world, but not from a bottom up, from a worldly perspective, but from the Creator's perspective. So now, the question the Rebbe is asking, we need to understand in terms of its impact on the world, what is it different it makes to the world? Whether he's speaking about makif kloli before the tzimzum, makif kloli after the tzimzum. As far as the world, it's the identical thing. It gives the world a right of being. This is the question right here. What difference is a legabe ho'ilomis from the world perspective? From the makifim perspective, it's a different madrigas of makif. But from a world perspective, what difference does that make? Bein bechinas makif kloli shelifnei hatzimtzum, bechinas makif kloli she'achar hatzimtzum. Both are makif kloli. Both encompass the world in total equality, from the highest unto the lowest. As we said before, in order there be the human being as he is with all his father, he has to have a world. And in order there be a cup on the table, it has to be a world. What's the difference when you talk about makif kloli shlifnei hatzimtzum and kloli shel achar hatzimtzum? Okay. Now middle of the second line. The Havade for surely yesh hefresh. There is a difference between makif kloli nitira tachtol, makif kloli nitira ilo. Because surely this is just, so to speak, a logical imperative. It has to be that there is a difference between makif kloli as it is before the tzimzum. Titator makif kloli nitira ilo. Titator means the lower purity. Tirilo means the higher purity. Higher purity means the purity as it is reflective of the source of the Etzem. Lower purity is the only purity as it is brought down in order to facilitate world. So, who am I talking to?
Here. So here it's the makif klali before the tzimzum and after the tzimzum, yeah. And I don't know. Perhaps the way I'm understanding this is, and I don't know if this is an apt mushal, but it's the concept of cup. The concept, the idea of a cup, as opposed to coming into the world and making it a cup. The idea is a spiritual one. Once in the world, or like the concept of dog, there is a concept of dog, but then in the world, the makif, after the tzimtzum, actually creates the dogs. They're not just concepts anymore. They're not just the idea, primordial idea. They're actually in the world. And then, going to a totally different step is the vivifying soul, which is the pnimi. That gives it the individual characteristics of each individual dog or cup or whatever. So there's the all-encompassing idea, so to speak. Then there's, as it is in the real world after the tzimtzum. And then the particular aspects of it, and all of its abilities, comes from the pnimius.
Yeah, but okay, fine. Thank you very much. But the other question is not the difference between makif and pnimi.
Right, but I'm just...
The difference between the two makifim.
Right. I just added to the last part.
I understand. So I'm just wondering if anybody is intrigued by the question, the difference between the two makifim.
Meaning the primordial one before the tzimtzum.
Before the tzimtzum and after the tzimtzum.
It just seems, as I said, the distinction between the conceptual basis of it versus the actual execution of it in the world.
No, if it's makif, it cannot be execution on a functional level because we're talking about makif.
Okay. So if it's not that, then what is it?
No. Good. What is it? That's exactly what I'm asking. Is anybody intrigued by this question? Because we have to understand the difference between makif kloli before the tzimtzum and kloli after the tzimtzum.
Okay, so now I understand the makif klali before the tzimtzum. Then it's a conceptual, so to speak.
Yeah.
Then I don't understand the second part. I don't understand the makif klali after the tzimtzum.
Okay, I think you can say hello to all of us.
Okay.
We're still before the tzimtzum. We're before.
You're all the way up there. The Rebbe says we must understand it. Okay. Rebbe, we don't know what you're talking about. Doesn't bother me.
Well, now it's I don't know.
So therefore, for our sake, from our vantage point, at our level, we have to have some kind of a factual way of describing these two makifim within our own orientation, at our level. You spoke about conceptual, so you have to come down a little bit more to within our orientation. Conceptual is only conceptual. It's still a projected reality. You have to bring it down to our reality in order to orient yourself in the question that the Rebbe is asking. We mentioned many times, and I'd like we should now focus in and see how real this is. You build a home, build a house. And you said many times, it's a house until a person moves into it, it's still a house. When the person moves into it, it becomes a home. The minute it becomes a home, and you walk into this home, and you see open spaces encompassed by walls and ceilings, with doors and windows and so forth. You immediately begin to project how you're going to use this room and how you're going to furnish it. You're not going to live in this open space just because it allows me to be there. You need human services. So you immediately begin to project, over here is going to be a table, over here is going to be a chair, over here is going to be a closet, and so forth. That's how you orient yourself in this open space. This open space really helps you, and it helps you design how you're going to use this open space.